The shadows beneath. It was a chilly October night, and I found myself alone in the old museum. My name is Alex, and I work as a night guard in this vast, echoing hall of relics and history. Usually, I don't mind the solitude. It gives me ample time to immerse myself in books and let my thoughts wander. But tonight was different. Tonight, the shadows seemed to have a life of their own. The museum is housed in a grand neoclassical building, its exterior a testament to a bygone era of elegance and opulence. Inside, however, lies a different story. The exhibits are a motley collection of artifacts from various periods and cultures, each with its own story to tell. But tonight, it was the stories they weren't telling that had me on edge. As I patrolled the dimly lit corridors, my flashlight beam dancing across the displays, I could feel the weight of the past pressing in on me. It was more than just the musty smell of old books and the creaking of the floorboards. It was a sense of foreboding, a feeling that something wasn't right. I had just reached the Egyptian wing when I heard it, a low, rumbling sound, like someone whispering in the distance. I stopped dead in my tracks, straining to listen. The sound seemed to be coming from behind one of the sarcophagi, a particularly ornate one with hieroglyphics etched into its surface. Cautiously, I approached the sarcophagus, my heart pounding in my chest. As I drew nearer, the whispering grew louder, taking on a distinct, sinister quality. It was as if the very air around me was charged with malice, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Suddenly, the lid of the sarcophagus creaked open, and a putrid stench wafted out, making me gag. I shined my flashlight into the opening, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Nestled within the rotten wrappings was a mummified figure, its eyes sunken and black, its mouth twisted into a rictus grin. But it was the shadow that emerged from the sarcophagus that truly froze me in place. It was unlike any shadow I had ever seen. It seemed to writhe and twist, as if alive, and as it unfurled itself and stood upright, I realized with horror that it was taller than any man, its limbs elongated and spidery. The shadow lurched toward me, and I could feel its icy touch seeping into my flesh. I screamed, backing away as fast as I could, but the shadow was relentless. It pursued me through the twisting corridors of the museum, its laughter echoing in my ears, taunting me with every step. I raced past the Greek statues and the Roman mosaics, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The museum seemed to have grown larger, its hallways stretching on endlessly, and all the while, the shadow drew closer, its hunger for my fear palpable. I finally stumbled into the main hall, where the grand staircase led up to the entrance. I could see the exit sign glowing faintly above, and I sprinted for it with every ounce of strength I had left. But as I reached for the door, the shadow's hand shot out and grabbed me by the ankle. I fell hard on my back. The wind knocked out of me. The shadow loomed over me, its face a blur of darkness. I could feel its breath on my face, cold and fetid, and I knew that this was the end. And then, just as the shadow was about to descend upon me, the lights came on. The bright fluorescence flooded the hall, casting the shadow away. I squinted up at the source of the light and saw the security guard from the front desk, a puzzled look on his face. "Alex, are you okay?" he asked, hurrying over to me. I heard screaming and thought something was wrong. I sat up, shaking off the last vestiges of fear. It was the shadow, I stammered, pointing back toward the Egyptian wing. But when I looked, there was nothing there. The sarcophagus was closed, the hallway empty. The guard gave me a puzzled look. "Shadow? What shadow? There's nothing there, Alex. You were just having a nightmare, that's all." I knew he wouldn't understand. How could I explain the terror of that shadow? The feeling that it was something beyond the ordinary? In the end, I just nodded and thanked him for coming to my rescue. But as I walked home that night, I knew deep down that it wasn't just a nightmare. The shadow was real, and it was still there, lurking in the dark corners of the museum, waiting for its next victim. And I couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, it had chosen me. The next few nights were a blur of sleeplessness and anxiety. I found myself constantly glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see the shadow lurking there. I even started bringing a flashlight with me everywhere I went, just in case. but the shadow didn't show itself again, and after a while, I began to relax, telling myself that it had been a one-time thing, a hallucination brought on by fatigue and too much imagination. Until, that is, I received the letter. It came in a plain white envelope, addressed to me in spidery handwriting that I instantly recognized. I tore it open, my hands shaking, and read the contents. Dear Alex, you thought you had escaped me, but you were wrong. I am still here, waiting in the shadows, biding my time. You cannot hide from me, for I am everywhere and nowhere, a part of the darkness that surrounds you. Soon, our paths will cross again, and when they do, you will know the true meaning of fear. Until then, sleep well, if you can. Yours truly, The Shadow. I sat there, frozen, the letter clutched in my hand. I knew then that the shadow was real, that it had been toying with me, playing with my mind, and I also knew that there was no escape, no way to outrun it. That night, as I lay in bed, the lights on and the doors locked, I could feel the shadow's presence, lurking just beyond the reaches of my sight. I closed my eyes, but sleep was a long time coming, and when it did, it was fitful and filled with dreams of darkness and whispers and cold, dead hands reaching out to grab me. The next day, I quit my job at the museum. I couldn't face those shadows again, couldn't bear the thought of being alone in that vast, empty building with something malevolent lurking in its depths. But even as I walked away from that place, I knew that the shadow would always be a part of me, a dark corner of my mind that I could never truly escape. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and the lights are out, I can still feel its presence.